I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. Hope you're having a good Tuesday. We all must be having a better Tuesday than Puka Nakua's agent. But some interesting deals out there so far. JSN got a massive extension to set the market. Travis Kelce got a big 3-year deal, and then people quickly corrected that it was really 1 year with 2 void years, but it is a 3-year deal. But if he wants to play again, they have to renegotiate. So I'm even more confused. And the Atlanta Falcons have decided to just absolutely bone every casual in a redraft league this year by signing Brian Robinson to back up Bijan Robinson, creating 2 B. Robinsons on the Falcons. Dennis, which of these moves grabs you the most?
I love JSN getting paid. I think he had a fantastic year. I don't see any downside to signing one of the best wide receivers in the league. They've got him under control for the next 6 years, basically. And so, go get it, Seattle. The salary cap's going to keep going up, and AJ Barner was coming on there. They got Zach Charbonnet. They're probably going to need another running back. I don't know either A, how good Charbonnet is, or B, how much I trust him.
Well, they went and got Emmanuel Wilson. A lot of people had speculated that Brian Robinson was probably going to go there, but it makes sense. Atlanta wants a quality backup. I guess that's where Brian Robinson has landed. The unintentional comedy of people using the 1st or 2nd overall pick
on the wrong B. Robinson. Yeah, watch me do it.
Well, I mean, you already had some of those weird name things, but at least you could see they were on different teams, and putting them on the same team is just kind of mean.
Yeah. The Kelce deal, it's good for Kelce, I guess. And it helps the Chiefs by spreading out the money.
I don't understand how it helps them, because they said it was a 3-year, $55 million deal, of which it's a 12-year one. So how does adding $42 million over 2 void years? This feels like being a parent in a meeting where they're trying to explain to you how they changed to the new Common Core math. I'm like, math is math, and this math ain't mathin' for me.
Right. I got to be honest. I don't know how void years work. Like, it's one thing.
Neither do the Saints, by the way.
It's one thing, I guess, if you're like, wink, wink, we're going to add a couple extra years. It's a total other thing to go, oh, yeah, they're void years. Just outright saying, yeah.
And I don't understand how it works. The one guy emphatically said this is a 1-year deal, and it's Kelce's farewell year. And if he decides he wants to play next year, they have to renegotiate and sign a contract. I'm like, no, bro, he just signed a 3-year contract. I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
But they don't have to sign a contract. Maybe they want to redo some of the numbers, but I don't know. It didn't say he got a huge signing bonus. That's the only thing I could think when you're trying to spread over years. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
The only other news, Josh Dobbs was released by New England, who apparently is content to roll with Tommy DeVito as QB2, which I found sort of interesting. Joe Flacco signing a 1-year deal back with Cincinnati. I thought he was good stepping in there. They obviously lost Jake Browning, who I can't remember now. Did he go to not the Giants? He went somewhere where it didn't make sense to me at all.
I don't remember.
Oh, he went to Tampa Bay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He's backing up Baker. So I think Flacco at least gives them a solid backup. But
yeah, does he? You know, I love the story. I really do. And in a vacuum, in a super like small sample size, I just think that he's running out of gas. Like he can do cognitively all of the things, and he's still got a big arm. But when he's trying to put it all together for 4, 5, 6 games, we're seeing him not really produce wins. So it's like,
so it looks like they also have Josh Johnson, who I think has been a backup on every team in the NFL at this point.
Something like 20
and Sean
22
Clifford
teams now.
So I guess they have a couple of veteran options. I was just thinking Flacco looked decent when he was filling it. I mean, honestly, when Cincinnati loses Joe Burrow, they're just hoping they're competitive. And
yeah, it's very, very reminiscent of the Peyton Manning Indianapolis years where, you know, Jim Sorgi didn't get any reps. And when Peyton got hurt, it showed.
It's better than I'm looking at the Jets quarterback situation right now. It's Geno Smith, Brady Cook, and Bailey Zappi.
I mean, can you really call that a situation?
Oh, here's the best one. Literally one quarterback on the roster for the Raiders. Aiden O'Connell.
Well,
back to QB1.
That feels like a Kirk Cousins, Fernando Mendoza. But the thing is I don't think Cousins doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to go somewhere to be a placeholder because he still believes he's good enough to start. And if you go somewhere where they draft a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick, you may start a few games, but you're not starting all year.
I just don't know where that place would be looking down the list. I mean, maybe you can compete for the spot in Arizona. I mean, his probably best shot to be locked in as a starter would have been to stay in Atlanta, but they redid that contract, so they couldn't possibly keep him. Him going back to Minnesota was a nice story, but now there's no chance. Yeah. I'm not sure Green Bay is going to feel like they need to make a move. I forgot they went and acquired Desmond Ridder, and he seems like the perfect kind of reclamation project, like what they had with Malik Willis to slot behind Jordan Love. They also have Kyle McCord. So I think that they're probably happy. There's not even a lot of great spots, it doesn't look like, from eyeballing this list where he could go in and be a great number 2. And I know that what you said, that's not what he wants to do. I mean, some of these quarterback rooms are giving me the willies. Yeah. The NFL Competition Committee has a few proposals that'll be considered. I guess next week is the league meeting. So we heard the potential rule changes from front offices. These are the ones from the Competition Committee to permit the kicking team to declare an onside kick at any time during the game. I guess that's fine, but you still have to declare it's an onside kick, so kind of eliminates. Eliminate the kicking team's incentive to intentionally kick the ball out of bounds when kicking off from the 50. I guess that was a rule error that they didn't conceive of when they made it. Number 3, modify the kickoff alignment required for the receiving team in the setup zone. Doesn't really specify what that is. Number 4, allow league personnel to consult with on-field officials when considering disqualifications for both flagrant football acts and non-football acts without being called on the field. I thought that was interesting. Like, hey, you guys missed this, so we're calling in to let you know that we're ejecting this guy. And number 5, for 1 year only, allow NFL officiating department from New York to correct clear misses by on-field officials that impact the game. This is sort of in the event of a work stoppage involving game officials from the Referees Association. I thought the only one that I thought was super interesting was the one where the league could call in and alter an ejection if something was missed, because there's been discussions before of officials missing like either a non-football or non-essential to the play kind of activity, or kind of a badly missed personal foul that maybe should have gotten somebody kicked out of the game. The other one about New York interceding seems like it has to do with the fact that they don't think that they're going to be able to work things out with the officials, and they want to make sure that they don't have. What was the last time? Was it Green Bay and Seattle where the replacement referees boned somebody on national TV?
I'm old, man. I don't have that kind of memory.
I feel like it was an Aaron Rodgers got a win in Seattle, and Pete Carroll talked about it for the rest of his career.
Right. No, it's tough. I think part of where the referees are coming from is I think they see, AI coming in and becoming part of the process. And I think they're trying to fight it. I don't know if it's a good thing that it's coming in or if it's not a good thing.
Is it AI or is it? I thought they had league officials.
I'm projecting it even further. Like the way they're going to use the ball and strikes thing in baseball to kind of do some stuff there.
Well, that's straight. I mean, that one, you're right. That straight is AI, which
so
it could possibly go wrong.
It just feels like a matter of time. Now, like any machine, garbage in, garbage out. So I don't think it'll be 100%. Can it improve some things? Will it damage how referees manage the game? Maybe, because they may get timid and decide, hey, maybe they get aggressive and let more things go and let plays happen and see what happens. But
I feel like this is their attempt to have a corrective response to, we've never had better like camera coverage and coverage of these games. Like back in the 70s, they didn't have all these angles. If there was a blown call, they may not have caught it. Even if they caught it, they probably weren't putting it on. Now we sit there and dissect while we're waiting for things, or they have replays on the broadcast that show clear and obvious, everybody wanted to talk in Denver's playoff game with Buffalo about whether or not he made that interception, but nobody wants to talk about the fact that the Buffalo Bills on replay clearly held a Denver Broncos defensive lineman in the end zone like 10 plays earlier, which is a safety, which they were talking about on the broadcast, and we were flipping out about at the time when you thought you were going to lose the game. I think there's been so many of those incidents in different games where they show you a replay and the announcers are talking about how badly missed a call was, and it has some kind of structural bearing on a game, that they're tired of it. Since it feels like we have the technology, we're also watching this, we could call and adjust the outcome. It's maybe trying to weed the human error part out of it, but maybe a recognition that these guys are bigger and faster and things are happening more all over the field. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
We will see. Well, free agency slowing down a little bit, as you might have guessed by this discussion. So today we are going to talk about some of the winners and losers. Each of us are going to have one winner and one loser from each of the key fantasy positions. This could be players that either improved their position by where they ended up, or had their position damaged by either not getting a good spot or somebody else coming in on top of them. So Dennis, I'll kick it off with you. Who is your quarterback winner?
So, I looked at a couple different guys. I like that Daniel Jones signed a contract in Indianapolis. He's coming back from an injury. Definitely had a connection with Alec Pierce. They've got Jonathan Taylor, which is great. the offensive line, they're starting to do. Some of the guys have left. They've got to maybe invest some resources there. Tyler Warren, drafted last year at tight end, basically took Michael Pittman's job. If Josh Downs can stay healthy, that's definitely going to be a good thing. So I looked at Jones. I think Anthony Richardson's a guy that's probably headed out the door at some point. But then I pivoted and I went with Tua Tagovailoa in Atlanta. I have concerns about Michael Penix ever really getting fully healthy. He's had, this is, I think, his third, maybe fourth severe knee injury surgery, probably three.
Yeah, third.
And I get it. He's got a good arm and he throws a pretty football down the field, but he's not quite as accurate as you would like. He hasn't delivered, and he's older. I think Tua may even be younger than him. I think Penix spent 6 years in college. And so Tua has a chance to be a reclamation project. And is Zach Robinson the Atlanta OC?
Yes, I believe so.
No, actually, Atlanta's got a new head coach. It's Tommy Rees.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Kevin Stefanski.
So Stefanski's going to be probably the play caller.
So, and what's Stefanski like to do? He likes to do play action, which suits Tua really well. Quick hitter, get the ball out, which Tua was successful with Mike McDaniel there. So
Michael Penix is just about to turn 26. Tua is 28. So
okay.
I was thinking, I was like, you know what, you might be right. But 3 torn ACLs for a quarterback feels. Now, on the flip side, Tua maybe 1 or 2 serious blows to the head away from
that is correct.
This might be the most fragile quarterback room in the NFL.
It's definitely an opportunity for Tua to sort of reclaim his spot. They're going to need to make sure that they put some resources in the O-line. They have 3 first rounders, a second rounder, and then a college free agent at center. So they could really use a stud at center. But Lindstrom and McGarry are both first-round draft picks in 2019. Not old, but not young. Jake Matthews at left tackle was a pick at first-rounder in 2014. They could probably stand to bring in some new blood in there. Matthew Bergeron's a second-rounder in 23, so he's fairly young. So they have some things. They put a lot of resources in the defense last year. I think Tua will probably start the season while Penix gets healthy. And if he gets on a roll, I could see Stefanski saying, we're going to ride this out. They may, they got Jahan Dotson and Olamide Zaccheaus as their 2 wide receivers to pair with Drake London. We'll see how things pan out. Stefanski did a good job using David Njoku and Harold Fannin, so that should bode well for Kyle Pitts. So I like Tua's landing spot. I think he's a guy that if I can get him as my QB3 in Dynasty, I'm like he could produce high-end QB2 numbers maybe.
For my quarterback winner, I went with Kyler Murray. Still has never thrown for 4,000 yards, still has a losing record, only has had 1 winning season, was a number 1 overall pick, never really seemed to get it together under Cliff Kingsbury, never clicked at all with Jonathan Gannon, seemed to wear out his welcome. They released him. He needed that rehab location. A lot of the talk was, he was going to go to the Jets or he was going to land on the Dolphins. And I think either of those situations would have been borderline disasters. But if Kyler Murray's ever going to capitalize on what people thought he potentially could be, I think Minnesota is an ideal spot. Still has Justin Jefferson. If Jordan Addison can stay out of prison, still has Jordan Addison. TJ Hawkinson, but Kevin O'Connell, and seems to be able to breathe life into every quarterback not named JJ McCarthy. Did some good things with Daniel Jones when he was there, did some good things with Kirk Cousins when he was there, did some good things with Sam Darnold when he was there, all of whom have gone on to find starting jobs elsewhere. So I thought for Kyler, that was probably the best place he was going to land on that kind of Russell Wilson 1 year prove it kind of deal. Hopefully that ends up working out for him. And conversely, then my quarterback loser was Kirk Cousins, who, might have been in perfect position to be that bridge starter in Atlanta, except for the previous GM renegotiated his contract and made it an albatross that no new administration was going to swallow. So he got released there. Conventional thinking was he was going to get one of these open jobs. A lot of people were talking about he was the premier option to go back to Minnesota, and instead they went with Kyler Murray. And so now he's a free agent, and we were just looking at the quarterback landscape. There are not any appealing open seats there for him. He may have missed his window. I don't even know if there is a logical place for him to land really outside of Las Vegas or Pittsburgh if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back. And so we started the offseason thinking he was in a prime position to make a move up, maybe after redeeming himself, because I thought he played pretty well down the stretch, replacing Penix in Atlanta there, but just no landing spot. So who is your quarterback loser?
Yeah, I agree with you on Cousins. It almost felt like he was trying to be too perfect. And so mine is Geno Smith. He's coming off a bad year, interception machine, and I get it. He landed in a spot where they're like, hey, you're our starter. We're going to get rid of this other guy, Justin Fields. They shipped him off to Kansas City. And at first I was like, oh, that, because their offense is bad. But looking at it, they've got Armand Membu, who was a first pick in 25 at right tackle, Olu Fashanu at first-round pick in 24 at left tackle, Joe Tippmann, second-round pick in 23 at right guard. They brought in Dylan Parham at left guard, who's a veteran. Josh Myers, who's an older guy out of Green Bay. So potentially, maybe I could be super wrong. I think, though, the issue is Tanner Eggstrom going to be that guy at OC? Will he be able to deliver this year? Oh, no, they brought in Frank Reich. That's right. Ooh, maybe I'm going to stick with that being a loser then.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun story for Geno going back to where he started with the Jets, but it doesn't feel like the Jets are a good organization.
Exactly. It feels like that
would have been my case for Kyler Murray.
Right.
All the immediate talk was Kyler Murray was going to New York, and I thought that's probably the worst thing that could happen to him. Geno will get to start. Maybe they'll take some kind of quarterback to be some kind of a bridge, because I doubt they want to roll with Brady Cook as their number 2, but who knows?
I feel bad for Garrett Wilson and Adonai Mitchell and Mason Taylor. They've got
and Breece Hall, who they refused to leave, and Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. I mean, they have
some weapons.
Well, the best hope is that Geno wasn't horrendous his last year in Seattle. I think there were problems with Seattle, and he got banged up a little bit. He was pretty outright horrendous with the Raiders, but that whole Raiders operation doesn't sound like the coaching staff or anything was in place. We'll see what our friend for the Jets has, Aaron Glenn, if he can get it together, because I think he's on an incredible hot. I am too, but I think he's on an incredible hot seat to start the season. We'll move to running backs. I'll kick it off. My running back winner is the Super Bowl MVP, Kenneth Walker. He was going to be the biggest domino in the running back free agency landscape. I thought all the way back to last offseason that Seattle was setting up to let him play out his contract and not renew it. And that is indeed the case of what they did. Then Breece Hall got the franchise tag, so Walker became the most appealing. He lands in Kansas City. I think that was the best possible destination of all the big ones that were talked about. He's a good runner. He can catch the ball. We've seen Eric Bieniemy, who is now back as the offensive coordinator there, be able to do some good things with multifaceted running backs. I think he'll be the best friend to Justin Fields, who's probably going to start 4 to 6 games. It's Patrick Mahomes coming back off that ACL. He is your franchise future. He tore it pretty late in the season. I doubt that he is going in September. So I think it's a good chance for him to settle in, a very good contract. I like that as a landing spot for him. So who is your winner?
I love the Kenneth Walker spot. It feels though like it is tailor-made for ESPN 30 for 30, crushing fantasy hopes and dreams with a perfect running back in the perfect situation that they decide to just not use. And so,
I mean, it's possible. I feel like if Matt Nagy was still there, I don't know if I would have said it was the perfect landing spot, but instead he got a running back in New York who apparently doesn't believe CTE or asthma are real. So
right. I looked at Zach Charbonnet in Seattle and I almost went there, but he's coming back off the knee injury, and while they don't have a ton of really good depth, they brought in Emmanuel Wilson, re-signed George Alani. Kenny McIntosh is coming back off an injury. So they've got pieces behind Charbonnet. And so it feels like it's going to continue to be a giant committee. So I pivoted and I went with Chuba Hubbard. They basically said, hey, Chuba, you had a great year. Here's a contract. We're going to bring in this guy to back you up. And Rico Dowdle spent 10 games stealing Chuba Hubbard's lunch money. And then Carolina looked around and said, though, he's getting our quarterback killed. We need to put Chuba back in there. And so Chuba kind of at the end of the year was kind of taking his role back. They didn't bring Dowdle back. They let him go. They got Jonathan Brooks coming back from a second consecutive lost season. Trevor Etienne, Travis's little brother, coming into his second year, mostly a special teamer last year. Then they signed A.J. Dillon, but come on, let's be for real. This is going to be Chuba. This could be like either if you're rebuilding and you're not going to be competitive this year, this might be the great opportunity to get out of the Chuba Hubbard business for a mountain of stuff. Wait a couple weeks into the season, let him take off, then flip him to somebody that thinks they're a contender for some high draft capital. Maybe somebody gets injured early, a stud wide receiver goes out and you're like, hey, I'll send you the Hubbard in a second for, Garrett Wilson or some shit. But I think Hubbard has an opportunity to end up as a RB1 this year. I don't think Jonathan Stewart, Etienne, or A.J. Dillon, they're all just kind of, let's spell the guy. Does that mean they won't go out and draft Jadarian Price in the second round? No, that doesn't mean that. They may very well do that. But it feels like it's going to be Chuba Hubbard. They invested last year in Tet McMillan. They got Jalen Coker. They signed John Mechie with Jimmy Horn as, they're 4 and 5. It feels like they have some depth at wide receiver. Tommy Tremble and Jatavian Sanders working that inline tight end, split wide tight end duo that most teams do now. It'll come down to, can Bryce Young stay healthy, take another step?
So who is your running back loser?
As I looked around, I was like, man, could be this guy, could be. Eventually settled on Woody Marks. I think Houston, Marks looked good last year. He looked great as a receiver in college. And a better runner than Rachaad White was. So to me, he feels like he's a better back than Rachaad White. Then they brought in David Montgomery, and it just doesn't feel like he's going to get a shot to be rookie year Rachaad White, where he gets the carries and gets the receptions. Montgomery is a good, solid back. He's still shifty. Last year didn't take a lot of hits. Had a little bit of a down volume as Jahmyr Gibbs had his breakout. I think that Montgomery, because he's such a strong pass protector, shifty in the hole between the tackles, runner. Obviously, Houston has to stop trading away all their offensive linemen. They need to start actually drafting and signing some so that C.J. Stroud can stay healthy. They have a really strong receiving crew. They just need to build up that offensive line to go with their great defense. So I think Woody Marks ended up kind of getting the shaft, in part because I think the tendency will want to be, we'll believe it's the Sonic and Knuckles kind of duo. I just think that Montgomery's going to take more receiving than he could from Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, my running back loser is another guy whose team brought somebody in, and that's Alvin Kamara. The Saints made a huge splash bringing in Travis. Is it Etienne? Is how we're supposed to pronounce it now? It's going to take some getting used to. 4-year, $61 million deal. It was already a little rough for Kamara because he turned 30 last year, had a career low in games played. Rushing yards 471, rushing touchdowns only 1, targets and receptions only caught 33 passes, and it doesn't seem like that's getting better. It seems like bringing in Travis Etienne is a indication that they still like Kamara. He's still a veteran. He can still bring some stuff, but he is going to be more of a reserve because it doesn't seem like there's been any movement toward trading him. And even if he got traded somewhere, I don't know where he would be the workhorse of a committee. So a lot of years Kamara was, set it and forget it, RB2 with RB1 upside, had some of the best fantasy games, had some of the best fantasy seasons. Now, it's probably the reality for a running back who's going to be 31.
Yeah, I think he holds on to the RB2 spot in New Orleans.
Well, they really have nothing else there. Yeah.
Right. Devin Neal is the other option.
Well, Kendre Miller would probably.
That's those two. Yeah. And so I think he can hold them off just fine.
Yeah.
I just don't think I think Travis Etienne's going to be the guy there.
Let's move to wide receivers. Who is your wide receiving winner?
Man, would have been really easy to pick Alec Pierce. Daniel
I thought
Jones,
about him too. I mean,
Jones loves him. He signed a big fat deal.
Wide receiver 1, they traded away his competition.
Yep. So and so I had him on my list, but I'm gonna. This is my pivot episode, in case you didn't know. I'm gonna pivot to Emeka Egbuka and Jalen McMillan as a duo. I know Chris Godwin's still there, and we've seen Godwin lead the league in receptions for a long stretch of season, before he got injured. So I think Godwin will be just fine. But with Mike Evans moving on, it almost felt like Mike Evans was bestowing the Tampa Bay offense on this young receiving room and Chris Godwin in Tampa and saying, look, I think you guys are going to be just fine without me. And, it was like this, this crazy ass mentor moment. I'm going to move on because I know you can do it without me, kind of thing. And so he's chasing a title now. And I think he made the bet he can win it in San Fran over Tampa. We'll see what happens, but he's looking for another Super Bowl. But Egbuka early in the season last year had some moments he looked unstoppable. McMillan was out for half the year coming back from an injury. Chris
Yeah.
Godwin was coming back from an injury and it wasn't up to speed totally all year. Tez Johnson's their number 4. That's still 4 really strong receivers. The running back duo, Bucky Irvin, Kenneth Gainwell, well, and they brought back my favorite, Sean Tucker, as well. So they're solid in the running back. Cade Otton, God bless him. He's a guy that could be a top 3 tight end if a team would just use him like that. Now, he's not a super athletic guy, but we see it all the time. Tampa's wide receivers get injured, and Otton comes in and goes 7 for 88 and 2 touchdowns. They get healthy next week, and he's back, 3 targets, 1 catch, 7 yards. 3 weeks later, half the receiving group is on the bench, injured. Otton goes 9 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown. It's wild that they can't figure out how to keep him involved when everybody else is healthy. I guess I shouldn't be saying they can't figure it out. It's probably they're making the conscious decision that he's just not that guy for them. But I like the trio of Ibuka, Jalen McMillan, and Chris Godwin. These are all these guys who are that 6 foot to 6'3", 200 pound, 210 pound. I think McMillan is probably the fastest of the 3. So he'll do the field stretching. It could be a super explosive offense again this year.
So my wide receiver winner is DJ Moore. We've seen him be a number 1 receiver with both the Panthers, and then when he came over, first was with the Bears. It did not seem like he vibed real well with Caleb Williams in either of their 2 seasons together, but it really didn't seem like he vibed well with him in that Ben Johnson setup. I easily could have gone with the winners being Luther Burden and Rome Odunze as well. I think it clarifies things greatly for the Bears, who are obviously going to get Colston Loveland more involved. But for DJ Moore, going over Josh Allen, they need a better wide receiver. They've tried a few different things. For as much as Joe Brady wanted to talk about, he still believed in Keon Coleman. I think they needed something more stable and steady. And I like him mixed with Shakir, and then you can try to hopefully get some good contributions from Coleman, maybe from Dalton Kincaid. But I liked that landing spot for DJ Moore. And I thought that ended up being a pretty decent price considering what we saw Denver just have to pay for Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I agree.
My wide receiver loser, Jauan Jennings. For the last 2 years, he has looked like the best wide receiver in San Francisco. Coming into a free agent season, I thought the 49ers were probably going to make a big play to bring him back. Instead, they went for Mike Evans. I thought for sure he was going to be one of the wide receivers that went off the board early. Has a lot to offer, and he still remains unsigned. And we talked about this last week, like looking around, there aren't any obvious great spots for him to end up. He could end up in Miami. We don't know what Miami's offense is going to be. He could end up with the Raiders. That's going to be a work in progress. He could end up still as a number 2 somewhere. But it's been fascinating for me to see, a guy that, based on what I was seeing on the field versus what we've seen in the market, just hasn't panned out. Who is your wide receiver loser?
So I looked real hard at Ricky Pearsall.
Not a bad choice.
Bringing in Mike Evans. I thought, they run the ball so much with McCaffrey. They got George Kittle. It was, I was kind of leaning there. So I wanted to check. Okay, there we go. I wanted to see how old Jauan Jennings was. Oh, he's only 28. Thought he was a little bit older than that.
He's not a spring chicken, but
right. And he was a little bit Adam Thielen-ish in the fact that it took him 4 years to really do anything. I ended up pivoting though to Michael Pittman as my loser. It's like, what's the guy got to do? He came out. He was, he's a 6'5", 225 pound with good speed, battles on contested balls, gets down the field, runs good routes. And it's like Indianapolis was just like, screw you, man. And then they sent him to Pittsburgh.
They looked at their quarterbacks and they realized they just don't need receivers.
Yeah. But then they send him to Pittsburgh where, he's got DK Metcalf there who has a particular set of skills. And so Pittman's skill set can complement what Metcalf does. But then you got Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. If Rodgers is the quarterback, who knows, Pittman could, sneeze wrong and Rodgers won't throw him the ball for 3 weeks.
The only thing, though, is Pittman can take like a little Scrooge McDuck bath in the $59 million contract that they just gave him to go to Pittsburgh. So
yeah,
he can wipe his tears with his $100 bills.
He's got that going for him. But, then he's got Mike McCarthy to deal with. I don't know how I feel
that
about
gives me a little more hope that neither of us may think that he's an incredible coach. I can't remember who they brought in as defensive coordinator, but I hope they find somebody to take that because that worked out in Dallas. Those Dallas offenses were, if nothing else, fun to watch. Pittsburgh actually has some weapons now with, Rico Dowdle may not be able to pass block, but he's there. They have Jaylen Warren. They still have Pat Freiermuth. I liked how Darnell Washington was coming together. They actually have a couple of receivers. They have the corpse of Roman Wilson. They could try to resuscitate, but you're right. They don't, if Mason Rudolph and Will Howard are the answer right now.
They brought in Patrick Graham as the defensive coordinator, who's had some moments over his career. It just doesn't feel like he's been able to maintain it. He's going to have TJ Watt there to kind of play around with. So we'll see what happens with that. Yeah. I don't know if
it definitely caps Pittman's value.
Yeah.
Pittman was a guy that for a while there in Indianapolis seemed like he was tracking toward top 10 or 15 dynasty wide receiver ranking. And now in his current situation, he's not getting there.
Now, I will say his quarterback situation is better than Anthony Richardson. I think even with Mason Rudolph and Will Howard, I think that's better than Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. We'll move on to tight ends. My tight end winner is Gunnar Helm. As a rookie last year, saw 55 targets, caught 44 passes for 357 yards, 2 touchdowns. I liked what we were seeing from him, and he was splitting time with Chig Okonkwo. Okonkwo is now gone to the Washington Commanders. We saw Tennessee brought in Daniel Bellinger, but as we've seen from Bellinger's time playing for Brian Daboll in New York, he's more of a blocking rotational tight end. I thought this was a good nod that they like what they have in Helm as being their receiving tight end. I think there's a chance for him to take a step up. I'm not going crazy, but I think going into this season, I have him in solid tight end 2 range, and I'll be curious to see what he can do from there.
Yeah, I like, Helm is he's an athletic tight end. He's probably not going to win a ton of reps in the run game, but he's a willing participant. But he's a good receiver. He was a target of, who's that cat now? Quinn Ewers, who's down in Miami. Yep. So I initially went with Isaiah Likely to the Giants. He's going to his old head coach. He's got an up-and-coming young quarterback. But he's also got Malik Neighbors there. And so I ended up pivoting over to Harold Fannin of the Browns. So Fannin came on last year under Stefanski and just kind of took the job away from David Njoku when Njoku got banged up. Doesn't have anything of note behind him. Blake Whiteheart, Jack Stoll, Brendan Bates. They're not great in the wide receiver room with Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and Isaiah Bond. These are all guys that you'd like to be your wide receiver 2 at best, probably 3s and 4s. We'll see if any of them come out. I liked what Quinshon Judkins was doing, but he got injured. Dylan Sampson and Raheem Sanders as backups are okay depth guys. Shadur Sanders, we'll have to see how this quarterback room shakes out. I'm not going to be surprised if Deshaun Watson starts more games than anybody for this team. Eventually you got to get some payoff. But the Browns went out and got Titus Howard, Zion Johnson, Elgin Jenkins to pair with to put in the O-line along with Tevin Jenkins. If DeJuan Jones could stay healthy at left tackle, he's a monster of a man at 6'8". But they do need some offensive line help. Most mock drafts have them taking a wide receiver and an offensive tackle with their 2 first-round picks. Depending on when you look, sometimes the receiver goes first and Denzel Boston, Carnell Tate, guys up there at 6. Sometimes they go O-lineman with Spencer Fano or Monroe Freeling's been one you see up there. Or they go with the O-line later. I would be extremely shocked if Cleveland didn't go receiver and O-line in the first round with those 2 picks. So I'm excited to see what Todd Monken can do. He, much like Patrick Graham on the defensive side of the ball for Pittsburgh, Monken has had some moments as an offensive coordinator. Now he's running the show. Will he be able to get it done? Who did he bring in as his OC? Travis Switzer, a guy I have never heard of.
I'd imagine he's going to call his own plays.
Oh, yeah.
So who is your loser at tight end?
I really struggled. You picked a guy that probably is the biggest loser at tight end. And so I struggled to see who is an actual loser. So I actually went with an entire room, and that was the Denver Broncos tight ends. You got Adam Troutman at the top of the heap there. They brought in Evan Ingram last year. We're all, lots of talk about him being the Joker. I just don't think there's anybody consistently there that, other than Troutman kind of as a blocker, that is going to really do much for fantasy. I took my Denver. I forget the rest of their
Lucas Krull.
Yeah,
they brought back. They had an interesting draft pick last year. I don't know if they kept him. It doesn't look like the depth chart.
They bring in Jalen Waddle. They've got Cortland Sutton. They've got Patrick.
Nate Adkins is really more of a fullback.
Yeah. So they brought back all of their running backs.
We'll see. There's a lot of rumors they're gonna take a tight end in the draft. I guess we will.
Probably, why not, right? But I
don't know.
Feel like
the guy I was looking for is Caleb Lohner. That was a big. They said he had the Jimmy Graham skill set, and I know they liked him in preseason. The raw potential. He stayed on the practice squad, but to me, these are all wish dreams. That Evan Ingram signing, I have no idea what they were going for, because it never looked like they were trying to feature him on the field.
Oh, the joke was on Denver, apparently. Not even a chuckle.
The joke is Denver's front office. I'm beyond chuckle. You referenced mine. This probably, not going to be a shock. Mine is Ben Sinnott. A second-round selection, kind of raised some eyebrows, but went to the Washington Commanders. We thought that was a great opportunity. They had brought back Zach Ertz on what seemed like kind of maybe just a veteran training deal. That first year, Zach Ertz was incredible, and Ben Sinnott couldn't see the field. But then Ertz was a free agent. We're like, okay, year 2, takes tight ends. Well, they brought Ertz back. He was still not as great as the year before. Their entire team kind of fell apart. Then he got hurt, and his season was over, and probably his career, with a knee injury. And Ben Sinnott still couldn't do anything. He has seen 18 targets and caught 16 passes in 2 full NFL seasons as a second-round pick. And this offseason, they splash out a big 3-year contract on Chig Okonkwo, which you have to figure is them bringing in a passing game weapon that's a little bit younger. I liked what we saw from Okonkwo in a low-volume kind of Tennessee offense. I think there's a good opportunity. And that just makes me think Ben Sinnott has no point in being on my rosters anymore.
It's, you have to be in a league with the deepest of deep rosters. Probably
you also still have to have hope, and I'm not sure
right.
after 2 years I do.
Well, it takes tight ends about 3 years to develop.
Well, and I also don't know what Washington's doing. That's what scares me when you're trying to rank Jaden Daniels for Dynasty, because he has all the upside in the world, but he's getting a new coordinator and scheme. They haven't exactly had we talked about their patchwork backfield. I don't know. I don't know what Washington's philosophy is on offense, and that kind of gives me pause too. But
they've got a first-time offensive coordinator who was a lousy NFL quarterback.
Okay. Well, that was our free agency winners and losers. I think we all feel both better and worse about our fantasy teams, which is about right for this time of year. That'll do it for this week. Next week, it's time to start shifting over. The NFL draft is less than a month away, or right about a month today, but it'll be less than a month by the time we get back together. I think it kicks off April 25th or 23rd. Math is tricky. But next week we will do our first rookie mock draft, which is going to be a real test. I'm glad I have a few days to consider and to do some studying and to brush up on that. But Dennis, if people have some free time this weekend, maybe they're on spring break, maybe their basketball team just is slowly tanking to death, what can they do?
Well, shout out to the Hilliard Bradley Jaguar basketball team. They made it to the state finals, ended up losing. It finished second in the state in Division I. So it was a mostly sophomore team. We had one senior. He was a starter. Our starting lineup was literally a senior, a junior, and 3 sophomores. And one of our sophomores just received a verbal offer, or he received a scholarship offer from Ohio University today. So we're pretty excited about that for him. So congrats to Kipton Norris. He's still got 2 years to go. I'm sure he's going to get lots and lots of offers. But head on over to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search button, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a like, give us a subscribe, leave a rating and review.
And be sure to follow along on social media. We'll post a link when we get ready to kick off our rookie mock draft. If you want to be a part, you want to get some early draft, try to get a feel for where some of these players might land. Always an exciting one. Until then, hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.